Tiago Pinto has been announced as the new president of football operations at AFC Bournemouth. And probably like you guys, I didn't know who he was, never even heard of him before. So I've done a bit of research and I'm going to explain to you in this video who he is and how he can help AFC Bournemouth. So we're going to be looking at his role and the big sales that he made at Benfica. That was obviously his first job. Then Roma, the job that he had before Bournemouth. He made some good signings and he made some bad signings. He has been a bit criticised for it. So we're going to be looking into those and looking at the risks that we need to see that we might be taking, but also the potential that he has to really help us out. And that'll lead us on to why he will suit AFC Bournemouth and how I really think he can transform us in this new project and era with Bill Foley. So let's look at his profile. He's 39 years old, so he's very young. A lot like the other staff that we sort of have around the club, obviously Areola, but even Pablo Della Torre, Tommy Elphick, Simon Francis, and all the rest. He's not an ex-player, so he's really an expertise in this business rather than just having this knowledge of the game. And he left Roma after the January transfer window of 2024. His contract was due to expire just next month, really, but he left early. Particularly, he's been spoken about how difficult it was to sack Jose Mourinho, who's of course the manager of Roma. So perhaps that has a little something to do with it, and Roma weren't doing spectacularly. But nevertheless, he is very highly rated. He was actually linked with Liverpool in the summer when they appointed, I don't know how to pronounce this, Schmadik, I don't know. But Liverpool's looked at him. He's also been linked with Newcastle United, Tottenham Hotspur. So this guy is quite highly rated. He's a known name in the footballing world of, the higher ups, maybe not to the general public, but people that are involved in the scene. He is fairly well known. So let's look at his time at Benfica, where Benfica actually hired him straight out of university. So he was, of course, going to university in Portugal, and he got picked up straight by Benfica, which is impressive. And he ran their multi-sport operation, which included futsal, roller hockey, basketball, volleyball, and handball, and of course football. So, this guy had a grasp on all sporting operations, which is interesting because Bournemouth have links to, that ice hockey team that Bill Foley owns, the Golden Knights or Black Knights. And generally, this guy has expertise not only in football, but also in general business of all sports. So that potentially holds something significant. He helped build Bruno Lage's title-winning side, which I think was 2019. So he has had a good track record there. And I think this sales is something to particularly look at. Benfica are sort of, a feeder club for the large teams in Europe. They're never going to be competing for Champions Leagues. And you could probably say the same for us. But what they do is bring in really great talent, which is also something that we do. So Edison got sold for £35 million, the second most expensive goalkeeper ever. And this was after just one full season for Benfica. So, it was Manchester City, who of course like to spend the money. And we're going to move on to another Manchester City player, Ruben Dias, sold for £50 million. João Felix, of course, was very highly rated, but he was sold for £110 million. And regardless of how good he was, £110 million for a player coming out of Portugal, you can't caveat that. That is an incredible amount of money that he managed to get for it. And I think that this links to Bournemouth because we have a lot of young players who are doing really well. We have Ilya Zabani, we have Dominic Solanke, Alex Scott. If we want to sell one of these players to big clubs, we could potentially be underpriced. And if Man City come calling for someone, we might be just forced to sell them because they want to leave and end up selling them for, Zabani for 50 million. Tiago Pinto will not let that happen. Tiago Pinto knows how good Zabani is. He knows how young he is. He knows the potential that he has. And he will maximize the profit that we are able to sell him for, potentially getting 70, 80, 90 million pounds for these players. And I do think Zabani will potentially be worth that in the future. But whether big clubs will be willing to cough it up, Tiago Pinto will use his negotiation skills to get that out of them. Now, let's look at his time at Roma, the club before he joined Bournemouth, of course. He spent 3 years there, so a good chunk of time at a big European club. And he helped build a side that won the Conference League in, I think it was his first ever season. And they also reached the Europa League final. In his final 4 years at the club, he made an impressive profit of £109 million. In fact, he only signed 2 players for fees in that period, which is just really impressive. And I think that's going to bring us on to to the point of the good signings he makes, and he has a real sort of project that he follows in this ideology of how to run footballing operations. The biggest one I would actually say is Jose Mourinho, managing to get a manager of that caliber with that success track record to Roma, who are of course a big club, but players there, that it wasn't an amazing squad and they weren't in an amazing position at the time, but he managed to convince him there. The thing about Tiago Pinto at Roma was that he got experienced players, generally a little bit older, on loans and free transfers a lot of the time, and this freed up the budget to spend big on youngsters, which I think is something that we'll see at Bournemouth, because we do want those young talent, but we also need that experience in the squad. The biggest one I think we can say is Romelu Lukaku. Again, a very renowned name in the European football market. £7 million for a loan deal this season. He scored 21 goals. Very impressive stuff. He's coming off, I don't think it was off the back of the season, but he played for Inter and done really well to help them win the league title very recently. The other big one is Paulo Dybala on a free transfer coming from Juventus, a rival, and a player that was renowned as being one of the rising young talents at one point in Europe. Perhaps not anymore, he's a little bit older, but 26 goals and assists this season, 25 goals and assists last season. Those are not numbers to be frowned upon, and very good stuff. Other notable names, Jorginho Wijnaldum on a loan, and this is a player that had, won Champions Leagues with Liverpool. He generally, just a very big name, and to get him on a loan is impressive. Husam Alwal on a free. This guy was one of the rising young talents. Again, I've spoken about that before. He was linked with Arsenal, I think, at one point, or numerous seasons, to come to Arsenal. He never did, and now they're picking him up on a free. Evan Ndicka, a young centre-back for Frankfurt at the time, they got him on a free. This guy probably could have gone to a bigger club, Premier League club perhaps, but Roma managed to snap him up. And I think that we'll see this at Bournemouth. As I said before, we've got a lot of young players and we probably need some more experienced players, but we also need to save the budget for some more young players. So to be able to get frees and loans, Pinto could really do that and really help us out, especially with the fact that we've spent so much money already across the last 3 transfer windows. And FFP, we've seen PSR rules being broken by Nottingham Forest, Everton, Manchester City. I think he'll be a good man to keep that money controlled. There have been bad signings. You got to look at it both ways. In the summer of 2021, in particular, he was criticised. Kumbala, they spent over £20 million for him. He went on loan to Sassuolo this season and played just 7 games. Last season for Roma, he played just 7 games in the league. So this is a guy that at the time was a younger player, but now has really not fulfilled that potential, and it's considerably backfired on Roma. Shomurodov, I don't know how to say that, €20 million. He was 25 years old at the time, but he'd only had 1 full season in a top flight league. They signed him from another Italian club, I think it was Genoa, and before that he'd been playing in Russian leagues, Kazakhstani leagues, and he's now 28 years old. He's only played 1 full season for Roma amongst various loans and injuries, and now is not worth €20 million, having just played a couple of seasons in the top flight and not really impressing. So Tiago Pinto has been criticised for overspending, but I think it's a risk to take. When you're signing players with big potential, some of them, they're not going to fulfil that potential, like Hama Traore for Bournemouth. And I think you've just got to accept that when will be bringing in some really good signings. You've got to accept that there's going to be some bad ones as well. And there's been mixed bags as well at Roma. Tammy Abraham is the big name. It was 35 million Great British pounds for him. And the first season, he massively impressed. 27 goals, 9 goals in the UEFA Conference League. But in the second season, he only scored 9 goals. And this season, he's had 1 start in all competitions. He's missed 42 matches for injuries. I don't think we can place that on Pinto as a bad thing, but he has still been criticised for it for some reason. He couldn't see Abraham was going to get injured. But I think if we look at the good side of that, he's gone to sign that player for a sizable fee, but he's definitely met that before the injury. And we've actually been linked, but I'm not really sure how concrete it is, to potentially signing Abraham. A Sangi replacement, I'm not sure I'd be too opposed to that. The big thing about Tiago Pinto that I feel like suits Bournemouth so well is that he has this massive focus on a youth project, which of course we've already started. That title-winning Benfica side included 9 academy players. He brought 13 players through from the Roma academy to the first team. And I wouldn't say we have a great academy that we're going to be bringing players up from, but I do think that we could be going and signing academy players from other big clubs, or just signing young players and bringing them through, like we've already done with so many. Zabani, Kirkes, Alex Scott, I could go on. And I just think that focus on the youth means that Pinto will really, really suit our project. And I think there's numerous reasons for this. Yes, a focus on the youth, signing high potential players, which we've already done, which Bill Foley definitely wants to do, and he definitely has the money to pump into it. But also that Pinto can manage FFP, financial fair play, with these free transfers and loans. So with a big budget still remaining under the regulations and really maximizing those players that we're bringing in, and maximizing profit when we're selling players, because we are going to be selling talents. Let's face it. Our best players over the next few seasons are going to be going to the big 6 clubs in the Premier League, really. But if we can maximize the amount of money that they're going to spend and give to us, that will allow us to spend that money wisely. And I think Tiago Pinto is going to be really good at that, to be honest. I'm really excited for this new chapter of AFC Bournemouth, and I really think that Pinto is going to be huge for us financially, signings, sales, all of that. I think that he will suit Bournemouth massively. But make sure you subscribe down below and continue watching the videos. We've got an interview coming up probably next week with a Premier League Bournemouth player, and just lots of talk over transfers, Euros, all of that good stuff. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys later. Up the cherries.